All right, welcome to Boulevard's Big Three, where we break down this week's sermon with questions from you, me, and Robert. And today we're continuing our Allegiance series with Daniel 11.
As always, if you have a question about the sermon, you can scan the QR code on the screen. All right, my job is to summarize your sermon. Brief summary.
Let's hear it.
Is anything
All
ever
right.
brief with you?
Can it be
That's
done?
the
Go
thing,
for it.
The brief. We need to be humble, pray, and fast. God is in control. God's side wins.
Yeah, you should have preached. That's it.
There you go.
I'd have loved it a whole lot better if you'd have preached, Robert, next time.
So let's dive into those big three questions. Lori, what do you have this week?
So you and I have known each other for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about you is that you've got this ability to find application whenever I have no idea how you're going to find application. So I was, once again, through this series and through chapter 11, when I read it before I came, I was like, what in the world is he going to do with this? So thank you.
You're not the only one. I asked the same questions. The first time reading through it scared me to death. I thought, I'm just going to have to go back and say, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this.
How did you prepare for that? Like, what did you do?
How
did you find misses like
that? A lot
that?
of reading, a lot of talking to other people, people that are smarter, much smarter than I am, which is not hard to find. But a lot of reading, rereading, and just keep reading. It's like those 3D books. Just keep looking at it until something jumps out. And I'm like, the biggest thing, I don't know if is that your first question?
Sure, why not? I might have four questions.
I mean, okay, for me, the thing is, like, why is this here? What comfort do I take in it? And if this is all predictive prophecy, I have to be left with, holy cow. Like, I mean, it fits like a glove. Like, it's right there, and it's all there just as he said. And that's why I named it that, because I thought any other page of the Bible, any other promise is just as he said. Anything that he tells me about my future, just as he said. Anything he tells me about who I am in him, just as he said. And he said, because, he has to point to this battle that I'm going to see to help me to understand that he's there in those battles that I can't see.
Yeah. So I like how you started off with kind of a recap. You had to lead us into chapter 11. And so you did a recap of Daniel's vision and his prophecy. And I really love that you pulled in, you emphasized that Daniel prayed for 21 days, as you're leading into this, and he humbled himself. And I think that that's a piece that we so often miss is that humble piece. But then you talked about in verse 16 that the invader will do as he pleases, but God knows what's going to happen. So what do we say? I guess my question is, what do we say to those people that are going through situations where the invader is doing as they please, whether it's an abusive relationship, or it could be they're in a job that is calling them to go against their morals, or just any of those pieces? What do you say to someone?
Oh, wow. I don't know how comforting it is to tell somebody that this is only for a time. Yeah. There's so many things that we're tempted to say that we shouldn't say, so a lot of times we don't say anything. I think just our presence of being there, they can't see the presence of an angel in the fiery furnace with them. They can't see a presence of someone in the den of lions with them. But I think that our presence and just being there with someone and saying, I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know the reason for it. Don't say everything happens for a reason. Just sit with somebody and be with somebody and say, I'm going to sit with you. We're going to praise in the storm, the song we ended the service with. Yeah. I'm going to sing and I'm going to shout in the middle of the storm. You sing in the middle of enough storms, the storms don't always seem as scary maybe.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I really love that you brought your brother on stage. Just watching your two minds work together is hilariously amazing.
We have great conversation. I love him so much. We're 7 years apart. We couldn't have conversations like this when I was 13 and he was 6.
Right.
But as we've gotten older, I just love that car ride. I was so blessed because this sermon would not have been anywhere close to what it was without that conversation of him helping me think through it. And I'm really indebted to him. And his insights into the layers of meaning, while I know it might be academic and we knew that it was going to be like going through a chart is tough, I just think it's so rich to say, let's mine this text, like the DBS bookmark. Let's mine, M-I-N-E, any text that we look at through these layers to get to what it is. I'm so thankful for him.
And it worked beautifully. I mean, it was great. And so let's go to the plot then for a minute. The plot of Daniel 11, God tells us about the battles we can see so we might trust him in the battles that we can't see. So how should we react to the fact that there are battles going on in that spiritual realm? That's a
Okay, so in talking about Daniel 10, that passage has always like really intrigued me.
yeah.
You know, the minute you started praying, I was dispatched, and I was coming to you, but I was detained for 3 weeks. I'd like to say this is true. I don't know if it is, but if for a second we could see what happens, if the veil was pulled back and we could see what happens when I pray, and I could see that, you know, I know it's a cheesy analogy with the Mike Tyson game, but if you could see the bar going like, you're winning, you're winning, you're winning, you're winning, if I could see that, I would think that it would just change the way I would pray.
Yeah.
And I'm so humiliated at myself that I pray for something once, and then I sit around and wait and whine when I don't get it. And God's like, you punched one time. Like, you punched one time, and then you just sat there like, what do you expect? And so, I'm 53, and learning about prayer has been the longest battle of my life.
When we had our first daughter, someone gave us a print, and it's a print of a father praying with a child at their bedside. The child's asleep and the father's praying. And then above that is this whole spiritual battle that's going on.
Yes.
And so I had that in between my kids' rooms, and every night before I would go in there, that was just a reminder that not only am I praying for my child, but I'm praying for that spiritual battle going on.
So here's the answer to your question. It just came to me. You remember in the Old Testament, Elisha's servant goes out and he's overwhelmed, and he feels like we're surrounded, and he says, Lord, open his eyes. He goes out and he sees that there's chariots surrounding them, and he says there are more of those that are with us than are with them.
Yeah.
And I think the prayer is just open our eyes. God, just give me a glimpse. God, just give me some glimpse of that moment. And we can pray that for a whole lifetime and may not see it. I do know people that have prayed that prayer and have felt like that, okay, I'm seeing the spiritual war that's taking place. I'm just convinced that if I could see for a moment the spiritual war that's taking place around us, it would change the way I react to strangers, the way I react to my friends, the way I would handle conflict, the way I would serve other people, the way I'd forgive myself. It changes everything.
Yeah, for sure. I want to have so many conversations with you about that, but I don't have time.
We'll do it offline.
Oh, offline,
we'll
for sure, for sure. Okay, so the third one.
Wait. That's like 6.
That's all right.
No.
I was
All right,
waiting.
no,
on
just
Robert.
one more,
It's
one
a big
more.
half dozen today.
I know,
huh?
I always get in trouble. I always get in trouble when I do it. It's like the Big 12.
You're like the guy in the Muppet Show that sits on the balcony. That's who you
I
are.
feel like a principal or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
what?
You make a great principal.
All right, last question, I promise.
All right.
Okay, so all throughout this election cycle, I have heard people say over and over again that it doesn't matter what happens, God is in control. So how does Daniel 11 emphasize this idea that God really is in control?
Well, if it is in fact the most accurate predictive prophecy, it's just astounding to look at that chapter and to watch it play out in history exactly. It's not as impressive to us because we see it.
Yeah.
And it makes even some of the critics, say, well, then that couldn't have been, it had to have been written after the fact. If God knows all of those things are going to happen, then anything else he says, I have no choice but to believe. I may not want to or know that I can, but I have to believe it. And again, the rubber bands. I'm sorry we don't have rubber bands to send to everybody. If only people in these other places had access to rubber bands. But
Maybe.
I think you can. Go get one. And when you're in that moment, you write, God is in control. You stretch it out, and you're like, okay, I can see it more clearly. And I think, I guess to get to your question, God has shown us so much that he's not surprised by, that nothing should surprise us.
Yeah.
But I'll go to my grave not believing it. And I'll tell you, Lori, I've been a little frightened as I've been put in these 2 chapters, thinking, God, why did I get assigned these 2 chapters? And now I've been thinking, God, like, why do I need to know this? Surely it's just to tell the church, right? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I got to Mike Tyson once on Knockout. Matt Vincent's house, probably sophomore year of high school. I lasted about 10 seconds with Mike Tyson. I was done.
Yeah.
Never got to it again. And you just took me straight back there today.
Good. I'm glad.
It's really an amazing thing. I mean, you guys went through some deep stuff right here. Those are deep questions.
Hey, Abby and John, come back.
Those are
Where are
deep
Abby and John?
questions.
Are they not here?
Sorry.
I'm not sure how we're going to trump any of those things, but if you have any more questions about allegiance or the book of Daniel, be sure to send it to us. You can use the QR code on the screen.
All right.
If you want to rewatch the sermon or watch it for the first time or listen to them recap the sermon again, you can find it at boulevard.to/sermons with an exclamation point, I think. That wraps up this week's Big Three.
All right, until then, don't be afraid to ask big questions. He's a big God, and he's got big answers.